All right, ladies and gentlemen, all between the binary. This is Get Informed with Wajeeh. I'm Wajeeh Lion. Thank you so much for tuning in from everywhere and anywhere. I wish you a great happy Pride Month starting from yesterday, technically. Let me put this on the group chat for everyone to come and. Why am I so slow today? I appreciate your patience with me. I don't know if you noticed, but our Pride Month merch has dropped officially. Nothing too special. I did it myself real quick and I did the whole thing together just so we have something out for Pride. So if you want to grab your Pride merch, our t shirts, hoodies, I don't know if we have hoodies. Let me check. I think it's summertime, so why should we have a hoodie, right? But 10% of the proceeds are going directly to Human Rights Campaign. Yes, we do have hoodies and sweaters as well. Organic options, all almond options, cotton option, all the V-neck options, whatever you want is going to be there. So yeah, make sure to grab your Pride Month merch today. I don't know if y'all know. Seems like the Middle East is going through some changes at the moment. So all of the direct and indirect talks have ended, by the way. The Iranian government has came out today and said that they are raising the geopolitical stakes, where the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps have issued an explicit directive threatening a total non-negotiable closure of both the Strait of Hormuz and Bab al-Mandab. Ya عيني يا Bab al-Mandab. Let's pull out the map. Let me pull up the maps for you guys because you need to understand. What does that mean to you? Okay, let's do this here. We have been looking at this a lot. We have been used to looking at this for the last 95 days. This is what we have been calling the Strait of Hormuz, Kashem Island, Ish, Bandar Abbas, and this is the Strait of Hormuz. This is all the UAE. This part right here, this part is Oman. And then when you go back here, this is Oman again. But then this is all UAE. Let's take a look again. This is about 34 miles or 34 kilometers. Now, this is Bab al Mandab. This is some of the most contested water space in the world. Some of the most contested water space in the world. And if you notice, it's much tighter, much smaller than the Strait of Hormuz. Almost a quarter of the size or one third of the size of the Strait of Hormuz. Yeah. And Al Houthi is in control of this, and they are in alliances with the This is Somalia, Somaliland. So the Somali pirates are in alliance with the Houthis in Yemen. So they're working together, intercepting ships. Why are you showing us Bab al Mandab? Because the Suez Canal, Suez, this is the Suez Canal. A lot of Egyptians died digging this up. So ships could pass the strait. Why is this so important? Well, this uh, canal right here connects all of Europe, connects all of Europe to the Red Sea, which then allows them to exit from Bab al Mandab, having access to the Indian Ocean, going to Asia and the rest of the Africa, saving them 13-day trip around all of Africa to go back here. So, what have we been doing here? We have the Saudi oil pipeline that goes all the way from the East Coast to the West Coast to Yombor, which has been diverting about 10 million barrels of oil a day instead of the 100 million barrels of oil a day that we're used to selling. And which means it's 10% of what we are usually selling in Saudi Arabia. But even then, if Bab al Mandab gets shut down, that 10% of oil that has been going through pipelines to Yombor so it can go get shipped to the rest of the world and go up to Europe would all be disrupted. And that is your only leftover leverage that you have for any any oil release from the area. Here's the other part: the internet cables. They pass through here and they pass through here. So if the Iranians really want to fuck up internet cables, they take a boat and they lower the uh, hook into the sea of the ocean, and they just pass until they cut those cables with the hook, and then they go to the port like nothing happened, and the rest of the world gets disconnected from the internet from these two choke points. The anchor, thank you. How does Europe stop that from happening? They can't. Well, they cannot do anything about it. The only thing that would be useful for them is using this right here to take oil from Saudi Arabia and then not go down, go up. So they would go from the east coast to Yombor, right? And then they would go from here, they would go all the way up there and then to Europe. But that would still have the rest of Asia all cut off. The rest of Asia would still be all cut off. Only Europe would have some. But Europe is dependent on Asian markets. So even if they have some economic relief from oil, if the rest of Asia still doesn't get their oil, Europe, Africa, Asia, and the United States will all be affected by the oil shortages to Asia. 80% of Japanese oil comes from the Middle East. 90% of Korean oil comes from the Middle East. All of the countries that we're dependent on in Asia depend on Middle Eastern oil, and their refineries are not designed to buy American oil. So even if they were trying to buy American oil, they wouldn't be able to have access to it. Sorry, I haven't been able to read your questions because I was doing the demonstration. Demonstration. But we're in deep shit. So Europe gets most of its products from Asia. The United States gets most of its product from Asia. If Asia is disconnected from the Middle Eastern oil, the rest of the global market is hit. Whatever you are waiting on, whether it's your computer, your new iPhone, your uh, recorder, everything that comes from Asia is going to be disrupted. May God protect you guys all. Let's go to the questions. Let's go to the questions. I'm wondering who you're expecting compensation from. Follow the cash. I mean, the insurance is definitely going to be there, but these countries are insuring themselves, so it's coming from the government, and 90+% of their income comes from these oil businesses. So it doesn't matter how much it's going to cost them. They're going to pay it, and they're going to eat the cost, and that's what it's going to be. But we know for sure that he, Qatar for needs at least 5 years to go back to a regular operation, and they have paused all of LNG production. Good morning. Can I talk about my take regarding the 2027 National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA, identified as HR 8800 Lies Section 224, formerly titled the United States Israeli Defense Technology Corporation Initiative? Do you think Great Britain is also in on this situation? I have not seen anything regarding this with the UK, but I can tell you for sure it was a big shock for me when. But I shouldn't be shocked at this moment when I learned that Israel and the U.S. government, with a bipartisan support from Adam Smith and the Republican leadership, worked on integrating the Israeli intelligence apparatus, specifically when it comes to computing, quantum computing and AI analysis, uh, to identify targets such as the the innocent school target that we targeted in the beginning of the war in Iran. That was a decision made by an AI, and we are integrating our governmental security apparatus with AI. And this essentially does few things that will erode American sovereignty and erode the strategic American decision making of when to choose to attack. This would take a lot of that away. In addition, it will take a lot of the democratic oversight that we have on money that we give away to Israel. When this goes into behind the scenes, where all of these decisions and funding go through the Pentagon, where we have the black hole, where we usually don't get to have a chance to audit the Pentagon and know where the monies are coming from and going from. This makes a great opportunity for the Israelis to have uncut funds with unsupervised. It also takes away the ability for for the U.S. House or Senate to investigate any of our funding for the Israelis, which also creates a huge problem. Um, this further integrates the American military with the Israeli military, making Israeli personal interests and American personal interests, which undermines American sovereignty. You also have the fact that this was trying to be done in secret, and took a lot of investigation for a lot of people to find out. I wrote an article about it. If you want the full detail and the full spill on it, go to my page and you'll find it on there. I strongly recommend you to read it. what impacts are the Israeli and U.S. attacks are having in Hamas, Hezbollah, and other adversary groups' retirement and sympathy? Are we going to end this with enemies that have more personal personnel with more resolve? I don't know if you know this, but when I was still in high school in the United States, the Pentagon came up with an equation for how many innocent life we kill using our drones during the Trump administration, during the Obama administration and the Bush administration. How many it resulted in how many terrorists. So for every innocent life that we killed, the equation was telling us we created about 1.5 terrorists. That is not my equation, that the CIA equation. So we have studied this extensively. We know that our strategy of targeting these terrorist organization isn't working because we are targeting innocent lives, and as long as we're targeting innocent lives, we're going to be creating opportunity for more people to become terrorists. Also think about it. If you are, a child, and you uh, target a whole building and you kill the whole family, and that child is left alone, and a terrorist organization comes and adopt that child, what do you think is going to happen to that child? They're going to become terrorists and join this holy war that they have been indoctrinated into. So you have to think about the big picture, and we have to rethink our strategy for taking down these terrorist organizations. And we have to remember that these terrorist organizations come from ideological point of view. They don't come from a nationalistic point of view, meaning that if you kill them, that doesn't mean that you have ended the ideology. Your fight is based on ideas. So killing people will not end those ideas. You fighting those ideas back and creating a dialogue and creating the perfect circumstances where you can convince others and have a conversation with them is the best solution for a situation like this. Studying anti-terrorism, you learn that the general definition of a terrorist is someone who uh, conducts a heinous crime against civilians to achieve a political meaning that if people did not have access to achieve their political means in a peaceful manner, they usually tend to look for violent situations to achieve those political gains, or to achieve those political uh, goals that they want to achieve. So we have to understand incentives. We have to understand goals. We have to understand where and why people become terrorists. And if we understand that, you understand then the tools that you need should be different. Saudi Arabia fought terrorism inside the kingdom by creating rehabilitation centers where they took Islamic extremists and they welcomed them into centers and gave them funding and gave them education and gave them housing and gave them everything they needed and helped them find the right path into modernity and leave away extremist ideology. And that's how they fought terrorism. They tried to fight terrorism with guns and weapons and military and special forces, and that was successful for a limited period, but for an extent where they actually put an end to the actual problem, they had to do rehabilitation, which means it tells you that the actual solution isn't an attack on these organizations as much as is finding the source of the problem and going to it and fixing it right there. Again, we tend to love finding easy solutions because we tend to think that these are going to bring the uh, uh, fastest, uh, fastest solution to the problem. But a lot of time it just ends up making the whole thing way more complicated, and people ends up going into more conflict. Hamas was created by Israel. In fact, was created by Netanyahu. In fact, Netanyahu signed off on having Israeli Mossad agents going all the way to Qatar, grabbing bags of millions and billions of dollars and taking it to Hamas. Why isn't nobody talking about that? So we got to work on shit. Could you curious about the depth and extent of Jared Kushner's relationship with MBS? This seems to germinate in the first Trump term. Can you talk about how deep it is and if it can be broken? How it could help? How it could it be? How it could? Okay. How crucial is this pact to Trump influence in Saudi Arabia and the GCC? It's the other way around. So the question is, could you tell us about Jared Kushner's relationship with MBS and whether Trump is using that as a way to influence the Gulf state? I say it's the other way around. The Gulf state have bribed the Trump family so much into doing exactly what uh, these countries want, to a point where the Jared Kushner's private company was solely, funded by these Gulf states, and they all received 0% back in return, and basically that contract basically ends in June. So that's it. They spent billions of dollars into Jared Kushner's company, and it's mostly to influence the United States so they can get whatever they want out of the US. Now, Trump's stupid decisions are putting these Gulf states in a very bad situation. They are also finding themselves like they might have wasted their money. But if Trump keeps going with this war, the Trump Kushner Gulf state might be hurting. Although they might keep that relationship just to have influence over the Republican Party, if I'm honest. I just can't believe that the Pentagon has no democratic oversight. How can a democratic country be this dysfunctional? Why did the US legislature allow this to happen and continue? There's like small oversight, but not that much. How can this happen? You have special interest group. You have people that served in the Pentagon and then got out and opened their own private companies and have their own friends in the Pentagon. So they do that type of corruption. I don't know if you saw former CIA agent that got arrested with a whole bunch of gold bars in his house, lied about whether that he was a pilot and type stuff like that. Yeah, tiny oversight. Tiny oversight. Do you think the 2027 NDAA Section 224 will enable the current administration to use increased usage of Pegasus against U.S. citizens? Why not? That's exactly what it's supposed to be allowing them to do. That's exactly what they're supposed to be doing. Will you please let us know the ways we can push back on Section 224? The way you can push back against the 224 is changing the people that represent you in Congress, if I'm being honest. Calling your representative, calling your senator, telling them that what the fuck is going on, this type of stuff. But there must be, grassroots work against it. Do I think that the integration and fusion of the Israeli U.S. military are related to Epstein and Maxwell? At this point, I don't know. But I wouldn't be surprised if they were. Um, One of our viewers is struggling economically. She posted her GoFundMe to keep her electricity on. If you want to support Nicole with her GoFundMe to pay her bills, this is a time where we stand up together. She has posted her link to the GoFundMe in the group chat. If you want to go support her, she'd probably really appreciate it. What's going on behind the scene between Netanyahu and Trump? They're fighting, but they have their own issues, and they're all trying to. Netanyahu wants this war to keep going, and Trump is trying to get the fuck out of this war, and they're just not on the same page. So they're having their own little drama club. If people are concerned about classified program, they can't see the classified information, but their congressmen can. They need to write them and demand answers. Yep, basically. So maybe we'll let you guys to have a minute to write more questions. Just want to let you know that we do have some merch out and about for Pride and merch that is not also related to Pride. So make sure to go and grab your stuff. The previous t-shirt campaign has like 6 days left. Our mugs are still on sale, and make sure that you take a minute to become a subscriber. If you can become a paid subscriber, please consider becoming a paid subscriber. It helps us pay the bill. Do this full time so you don't have to. Are you concerned that the Pentagon press room is now off limit to reporters? Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, we talk about oversight. Our oversight is being eroded in the United States. How are you supposed to be up to date on what kind of violations happen, or if someone is reporting an issue, or how are you supposed to know about that stuff if you are not going to do something about it? Huh? You have to. I'll give you a little bit more time to write your last few questions if you have any more left. And again, Nicole is in the Q&A. She posted her GoFundMe if you want to support one of our community members to pay their bills and put some food on the table. This is one of our worst economic situations in the country. It's not a bad thing to stand up together. I'll wait another few minutes. Am I doing anything for Pride? I'm probably going to the Pride events. What is the mindset of the Iranians that don't support the regime? There's several mindsets. You have a liberal mindset that is looking for the general good of the people. You have the mindset that just doesn't want the religious government anymore, but also doesn't want European or American hegemony in Iran. And you have like those who are like Raza Pahlavi, the royalists that want to bring the royal government back. So you don't have like, and then you have like the socialists or the yeah, you have like socialists and communists that want to bring other ideas, and you have like some religious groups that just want a different type of governmental system. So there's like a wide range of array of opinions. Do you think it's likely that Iran will yank the digital cables? They might do it. How likely? I don't know yet. Might be used as they might use it as uh because once you do it, it's really expensive to fix and it takes a minute to fix. So they might be like a trump card, like to escalate shit. What do you think about people not being allowed into Great Britain because of talking publicly about U.S. Israeli government being military? Because merged, I think you're talking about Hassan Piker. I don't agree with everything that Hassan Piker says, especially about with his opinions with Hamas. But it just shows that a country or countries that have been standing up on the podium of freedom of speech for centuries are now the same countries limiting people to have their opinion of freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is freedom of speech, whether you agree with it or you don't. People need to have the right to have a dialogue. People need to have the right to debate, and these people are not like they're not calling for mass execution, they're not calling for war, they're not calling for uh more conflict, they're calling for peace. And it's kind of confusing when someone is calling for the end of the war and you're, making them out to be horrible people. They might have horrible opinions about organizations that I think are terrorist organizations, especially that like Hamas was created by Israel and was designed to create, some sort of instability in Gaza, and they never had another opportunity for an election. They have a lot of problems I have an issue with. But when it comes to dialogue, when it comes to speech, when it comes to opinion, you got to have people talk. You got to let them. You got to allow them get on the stage and say something. The fact that they were comparing them to Kanye was hilarious to me. You have someone like Kanye who's like obviously supporting the Nazi movement, obviously supporting, some crazy white supremacist ideas and stuff like that. And they said this person is in danger to European. Okay, I get it. Okay, whatever. But these are just having public debates. They're like having an actual opinion and a dialogue. Confusing. You either want to have open freedom of speech or you don't want to have open freedom of speech. Does the IRGC actively monitor, spy on citizens' internet uses? Yes. The IRGC actively monitors and spies on citizens, domestic and abroad, by the way. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, boy. The Lincoln Square is about to go live in 9 minutes. Is that the same people that have David Hogg in him? Been trying to collaborate with David. I think he's a smart guy. What do you think what's happening in the US with AI? I think the world needs to do a lot of regulations around AI. For some reason, we're like letting it like the Wild West for some reason, allowing it to go loose. A lot of our kids have been affected. It has been telling our kids to do horrible things to themselves, from committing suicide to making sexual contacts to doing sexual violence. And it's all directed by AI, away from parents' interactions, but away from parents' involvement. And it just looks like to the parents like they're just texting their friends, and there are no, you know, guide rails to do any of these things. We've seen terrorist attacks being conducted in our country with AI helping these people plan these terrorist attacks. So, wait, we need to do something about that. How are we not freaking out about this? I don't know. Like, we're freaked out about drag shows and kids, but we're not freaked out about AI and kids. Like, priorities are not figured out for some reason in this country. Like, the extent of AI into the mind of your children is way worse than anything else. And have you asked why the 1% and the rich class is banning their kids from using AI? Rich people are banning their kids from touching AI. The 1%? You don't get to use AI in my house as a child. The problem is now everything, like, they add AI to it. And like my problem with that is that, okay, tomorrow I'm gonna go buy hearing aids, or I want to go buy a TV, and all the TVs that I'm going to buy has AI in it. What kind of level of AI? What kind of integration is there? Who is controlling that information? Where is that information going? Am I having any private information left? What if I'm going to go buy hearing aids and the hearing aids has to have AI software in it? Why is all the computers I'm going to go buy now have AI in it? Like, everything some have some sort of AI integration, and it just doesn't make sense to say all of it no, but what makes sense is we need to have policy and regulations around all of it. We need, like, I'm a disabled person and I go through vocational rehab, and I needed some, some technology tools that I could use with my disability. So I went to, the local government system, and they have a room as in the size of an apartment building, and all of that room, like the whole place, is filled with toys and technologies for people with disability. 90% of all of the tools use AI. That was shocking to me. And then when I talked further with the people that work for the state, they're all like, yeah, we encourage people to use softwares that have AI to help people type. We encourage people to use software with AI to encourage everything they were encouraging that had some sort of AI in it. So that's kind of confusing. Because on one hand, I need to use this software as a disabled person to achieve some sort of normalcy. But at the same time, kids, why the fuck are we giving kids some communication app with an AI that says they're a therapist, and all of a sudden they're telling the children how to hate themselves and how to abuse the system and how to be a bad person and doing all this fucked up shit. Like there has to be some sort of middle line here. I teach software development. I have a real concern that people may not be able to learn to code with AI. Dies, just dies it for them. Does it for them. Yep. Yeah. So, and everything. I mentioned this before in Malcolm podcast today, but I feel it's wrong. It's worth saying it again. Uber driver today was Iranian from, I hope I spelled that right. And he said that most Iranian people are not religious. His exact words: the most people want is a secular society. People want a secular society, especially if you live in an authoritarianship. But that doesn't mean that there are a lot of people who have been indoctrinated and fully believes in the system, and it becomes really hard trying to differentiate public opinion than forced opinion, especially in dictatorship and authoritarianships. At one point, do I believe the word that this person is telling me is true, that they are happy under a dictatorship? And at what point do I take the other person's criticism? And I think, being, as someone who is a dissident and someone who has publicly criticized the Saudi government, and I used to view myself as a member of the Saudi opposition. Now I don't call myself a member of the Saudi opposition for many reasons. We can get into it later, but the reality is that you can have a lot of criticism on a state like Iran, and at that point, it becomes really hard, even for us as Saudis, to differentiate whether these Saudis are happy by force or they're happy because they are. And it's probably a combination of both, if I'm being honest. If I'm being honest, they're happy to an extent and they're not happy to a different extent, like just like any other person living in any other country. There's a lot of things that I was grateful for under the kingdom, but there's a lot of shit that I was not grateful for either. Especially once you start like tasting the breath of freedom of speech and the ability to have free thinking and critical thinking. Once you live in a dictatorship, they kind of try to take that away from you. They take the ability to have critical thinking away. So once you become a critical thinker and you see the people around you not being able to do that type of critical thinking, your initial instinct is to attack the whole regime and to attack everyone that is still under the spell of the regime. Yeah. Yeah, Americans do take freedom of speech for granted. I don't know if you know this, but collecting signatures collecting signatures is illegal in Saudi Arabia and punishable by death. Me going out, oh, what do you think about such and such? Can I get your support to sign on this? That's punishable by death. So when I had an opportunity to work as a grassroots organizer and work for the election in the United States, that was a dream come true. I was a grassroots organizer. I knocked on thousands of houses' doors. I've collected and was the second person to break the collection of signature of record at one point in Missouri. Collected so many signatures to put ballot initiatives like Raise Up Missouri and Clean Missouri and Vote No on Prop A, and Show Me Cannabis. Uh, all all constitutional campaigns that we had in Missouri, where we fought the right to work bill, which is, I love how people in America misname shit on purpose to make it seem like it's the right thing to vote for. So they'll do like the right to work state. This is a right to work state. And what they mean by that is that we're bankrupting all the unions and we're making it impossible for anyone to unionize in any business. And that's just if I'm simplifying it. So we're a right to work state. Let's vote to make this a right to work state. And people will be like, "Oh yeah, let's make it a." Once you find out what it means, you're like, "Oh shit, no, no, we don't want this to be a right to work state. Oh hell no, we don't want this to be a right to work state. We want our unions. We want to be able to unionize. We want to be able to have our representation." So, yeah, when I ever had the chance to, that was the first thing I did. And I actually got attacked doing voter education for the November ballot on September 6th of 2018, around 5:50 p.m. Someone came out of their house. They weren't in their right mind. I was with my boss, and they attacked me and my boss, and had to escape for my life. So, political violence has reached a peak in this country before Trump was in his second administration. This happened in his first administration. So, just to give you an idea, uh, would you encourage people to be more self reliant? Absolutely. Uh, Try to find a bartering system. Try to find a community where you are exchanging goods and services instead of buying goods and services. Um, what you also could do is work on having a community garden. These community gardens save hundreds and thousands of dollars for a lot of communities where you can, garden your essential good. I encourage even to have community greenhouses for communities that have colder temperatures so they can have these gardens all year round without interruptions from snow. Um, these types of community coalitions and what is that called? Um, Co-ops. The co-op is one of the things. Having co-op is one of those things. But I'm thinking a bigger picture than the co-op. Anyways, the idea is that um, even though these things should be provided by the government, we're finding ourselves, in a commune is one of them. Yes. That's one of the bigger ideas that I do have. We should be having our own communes. We should be creating our own small community network. Uh, I was my one of my life goals is to convert one of those malls that have shut down into a center, a convention center where they take in houseless people, and it would have everything from social services to nonprofit to social workers to it would have uh, a clinic, and it would have some housing, and it would have some place for you to rejuvenate and clean up, and it would have some clothes banks and stuff. It would be a whole center, as like the mall is a whole center for people to go shopping. I want to convert one of these malls that have already shut down into something like that. I want to repeat that, and I would love to repeat that over all over the United States, because the United States is a large country and is designed to be commuted mostly by car. So if I can, uh, uh, there's someone is saying there is a model of that. We'll check on it in a minute. I think, like if I can create the environment for these nonprofit and corporations and uh, because we have the space for it. We genuinely have the space for it. And it just takes that group work. There's so many, government offices that have been shutting down, big offices that have been shutting down. So, just wanting to convert that space and having a hub for these services to exist creates an environment where everyone going there is looking for a solution. Everyone going there is looking to make a change. So you're just making a perfect environment for that change to continue to happen. So it's just one of my ideas that I hope I can bring to life one day in my lifetime, and be repeated, especially across small towns, because there's so many small towns and cities that have a lot of veterans, like Puerto Rico, and states that have a lot of veterans. Puerto Rico, unfortunately, is one of those states that doesn't have the right to vote, and yet majority of its people have served in the U.S. military, and they don't have a VA that's close to a lot of people, and they don't have health services that's close to a lot of people, and it just becomes very hopeless for a lot of these people. It's so sad. And yeah, one of my biggest ideas is converting them into one. Someone said, "We'll DM when I dig." Thank you. But that's what our country needs at this moment, if I'm being honest. And you ask me like, why do you're just giving these people a lot of slack, and I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm making an economic improvement. Let me tell you why. If people are poor and they're dependent on my donation all the time, then they're going to be always dependent. But if I make them have stability, if I improve their situation where they have education or training or an access to job, then they're no longer dependent on me. Now my economy is dependent on them. Instead of making it hard for people to find jobs, instead of making it hard for people to find stability, instead of making it hard for people to have their documents one place, we should make it way easier. Make it easier for someone to get access to treatment from drugs. Make it easier for someone to test the drugs that they have on their hand, whether it's gonna give them overdose or not. Make it easier for this person to get isolated and have treatment from these drugs. Make it easier for them to get insulin. Make it easier for them to get the medical treatment that they can get so they can see again. I know one of my friends that lost a job as a bartender because of his eyesight. And he tried to commit suicide, and I was his roommate at the time. And if I wasn't his roommate at the time and he begged me not to call 911 and he had a suicide note on the table and he was in and out and I had my stupid ass was still new in the US. Was coming back from work. I was in such a shock. I called my boss. I'm like, "What do I do?" Cuz I'm so used to like when you're in trouble at work, you just like, "Boss, what do I do?" He's like, "Why the fuck are you calling me? You call 911." But, yeah, it's a sad story, but with my stupid ass still trying to figure shit out in the US. But that's the situation a lot of people find themselves in. They lose their job because, they suddenly lost the ability to have vision or and they go to they don't think they can get help from family and friends, so they go downhill fast. We wanna stop that from happening. We wanna create our own vocational rehab. We wanna create our own, system where we allow people to find a safe space. Are you sick and tired of finding needles in the park where you send your kids to? Are you sick and tired of finding houseless people in the middle of the street? Then give them a place to go. Provide them with a safe place to go and use their drugs. Give them a place to go to hide from the sun and the cold. Don't shuffle them around the city. That's not gonna solve the problem for you. That's just gonna be wasting our taxpayer dollar over and over again. And you know what? The whole idea of me trying to have a mall and end up having nonprofit organizations, social services is already a waste of resources because the government is the one that's supposed to be doing all this shit and we're having the responsibility of doing it. So it's fucked up that we're having to waste so much more resources to help these people out, but I don't see any other solution. Like we're spending $100 billion on the war on Iran with just for 95 days, and we can't even spend $1 billion housing people in the country. 100 days, we spend $100 billion. And someone's like, "Oh, you're being a socialist." Tell me the military is not socialist then. Yes, the military has invested in some of the best technologies that we have and created the internet, the tool that we're using at the moment. They provide us security and safety. But at the moment, the president has decided to make decisions to make the whole world worse economically. Someone goes, "My community garden is a work in progress." Awesome. People say they don't have money to contribute and coming out to reach to the ranch is too far. Yes, if you think about it, majority of Americans live in food desert. If you have to drive more than 10 minutes in order for you to get protein, fruits, and vegetables, you technically live in what's so called as food desert. That's why the community gardens and need to be in within each neighborhood. Each neighborhood, each block needs to have its own Each block needs to have its own garden, not neighborhood, each block. And then each neighborhood should have its own uh, farm, because with this industrial and farm system that we have has pushed a lot of small farmers away from the business and made our food way more dangerous. When food is such in an industrial level, when you make one mistake becomes a huge big one. If one animal is slaughtered with the wrong knife and you haven't cleaned that knife for the next 10 animals, those whole 100 animal that you have slaughtered with that one knife is now a diseased animal. And now we're all sick. Yeah. Maybe we should have goats in every garden instead of lawnmowers. Everyone should have two, three goats in the garden. You know, some cities now use goats to deal with the weed, weed infestation. They bring the goats to eat the weed in a way that is, so you don't spread chemicals everywhere. People are little suspicious, probably because my eyes are blue. People are going to be suspicious all the time. It's okay. Our tax money should be spent to help people, not spent on enriching warmongers. That's right. That's what I'm trying to tell you guys. For some reason, we're okay with private prisons, but we're not okay with a mall that rehabilitate people, a whole center. Let's call it potential spam. Be careful with your cannabis. They will eat the cannabis too. Ever notice that nothing can be done in the U.S. unless a rich guy at the head of the table conference says, "Okay, let's do it." In many ways, you are more true than wrong. That's why I keep telling people it's not right versus left, it's top versus bottom. I should make that the T-shirt. It's not right versus left, it's top versus bottom. Y'all, it's not right versus left, it's top versus bottom. There's sound. Maybe you had a disconnect with the headphones. Okay, we've reached an hour and a half so far. Thank you all for tuning in. I love your faces. Make sure you check out our latest merch that I have on my bonfire. We got some Pride Month merch for you. Make sure to go down late, grab a cold one, chew that tobacco, roll the rusty truck, have a shotgun back of that truck. No, no, no shotgun back of that truck. Like, subscribe, and share. Make sure that you attend every podcast you could, and we'll see you tomorrow. I think I have a good country accent. It's okay country accent. Country accent with Arabic accent. You can sense them both come out together somehow. Aloha, aloha. Thank you so much, y'all. I'll see you tomorrow.